By now, you've had some time to play through the newest update, Escalation of Freedom. With that came a lot of new changes that lit the community aflame, so today let's discuss Fire in depth, talk about some of the hidden update features, test how the buff stratagems feel, and give you the motivation to get on Helldivers too. So to start off, let's talk about the elephant in the room and discuss how the updates to Fire feel. We'll do this by discussing both the new Warbond weapons and old stratagems together, as well as get an understanding of fire damage and subsequent changes to time to kill. Allow me to elaborate further. Fire has been a part of a lot of different stratagems from day one until now, whether it be from handheld flamethrowers to being part of a passive to explosive ordnance, or hidden as a newly added passive feature to old stratagems, but don't worry, we'll come back to the secret later. Though the fire nerf was a big debate within the community, let's try to look past that for now and onwards towards the positives by noticing fire still does effective damage to the right targets under the right conditions, which may raise the question, what are the right targets and the right conditions? The right targets. Fire is great to use against small terminids, being able to kill them within seconds. This is great news as there are many more smaller terminids on any mission compared to the larger ones. Think of the rate at which you encounter hunters, spitters, and debatably warriors. Compare that to chargers, bile titans, and even alpha commanders. Another target for flamethrowers is the ground. You probably already noticed this from how the napalm strike functions, but note that it also is beneficial to aim at the ground to scorch the earth for lingering damage over time. Finally, a great target for the flamethrower would be bug breaches themselves. Since the majority of terminids from a bug breach are small to medium enemies, it makes sense to target their weak point. While these enemies are stuck in their breaching animation, torch the area to instantly decrease the amount of enemies on the field. Now let's talk about the right conditions. As fire damage no longer goes through armor, it is now important to use synergy to defeat enemies. What I mean is that a diver will need to fully combo armored enemies in order to guarantee a kill. This contrasts the past cases of only using a flamethrower to quickly dispose of all enemies within seconds. Take note that this patch reinforces the previous change to armored chargers' survival time, as if you remember, originally they were finished in a single explosive headshot to now it taking double the shots to kill. This previous buff to chargers, although made it difficult to survive and had outrage within the community at the time, have become normal to those divers who consistently drop Liberty on our enemies. What I'm saying is though yes, initially it was an unwelcome change to most, as the name implies we are Helldivers. Our battles are unfair, our divers are outnumbered, and our time is not infinite. But we make up for what we lack in the teams we fight alongside. So don't give up your indomitable spirit just yet. Moving back on topic, and to solidify the importance of knowledge on the battlefield, note that against medium and heavy armored targets, the fire should hit exposed areas to inflict burning. So crack the shell with your choice of hard-hitting stratagems such as rocket pods, quasar, or any highly explosive stratagem to start the combo before flaming the exposed flesh. It is also important to note that when using fire, avoid shooting at the head. This is important because damage over time does not transfer to the body, so damaging only the head only affects the head of the terminid, which can be problematic if, for example, you are facing an alpha commander, which can function headless on the battlefield. Lastly, note that since the fire change occurred, it's a lot easier to light yourself on fire. Aiming at the rocks and terrain that is expected to have bounce off will sometimes cause the player to self-immolate. This also occurs due to wind conditions blowing the fire backwards, or sometimes during dive animations as well. So now that we've gained the knowledge and motivation to fight, let's move back to the question of how fire damage over time feels in the current game before we move on to the hidden buffs that were introduced. Now, I understand the arguments to the recent nerfs quite well, as the devs are making the games more difficult by nerfing fun-to-use weapons rather than buffing unusable ones such as those from the assault class weapon category, and instead buffing enemy forces to be harder to kill, thus seemingly limiting weapon builds, creating a meta which they then nerf, rather than buffing to create more weapon variability, allowing players to choose from a larger pool of weapons and stratagems. Another way the devs could have handled the situation was to change spawn mechanics similarly to how they changed them in the past, as a way to increase the difficulty without decreasing the damage of specific weapons. But be that as it may, this is undeniably only a single problem out of a larger patch, which when looked at from afar seems like a less potent change. The nerf to fire was indeed unfortunate, but there were other positive parts of the patches that occurred due to this, so let's not dwell on only the negatives. As the new update also included bringing in 3 new fire weapons as well as a fire themed booster, let's talk about those now. The primary and secondary flamethrower weapons have indeed been fun uses on tournament maps, as now they allow for build variety themed around burning enemies. This is of course due to increasing flamethrower spots as a weapon or stratagem, granting the player more freedom to bring other democratic tools of justice. Using the knowledge we gained earlier about the flamethrower allows us to minimize deaths while maximizing kills during the missions, making it seem like the fire nerf was not so bad after all. In fact, the new booster allowing drop pods to hit like a meteor allowed for a new type of mechanic to enter the game. As hitting enemies with drop pods has always been a valid attack strategy, the introduction to a more damaging call-in strike adds more depth to any low cooldown build. For example, utilizing this booster with mines allows for a higher probability of success when deploying mines in a hostile environment where the stratagem could be instantly destroyed on arrival. Also note that with every update comes hidden features added to the game, the first of which relates to setting enemies aflame. Now, if you haven't already figured it out, the newest patch came an upgrade to every laser weapon. Now laser weapons set targets on fire for a short time. Note that this is great as it buffs laser weaponry, which has been a bit overshadowed lately by its peers. This means the primary, secondary, and support laser weapons have gotten a buff to their damage, and those buffs of course would also include the rover guard dog. Also, did you know the laser cannon can kill shrieker nests? I didn't realize that until today, and finding these new mechanics always gives me that shot of dopamine, which is only sources from the way that the Helldivers styles their updates. If that hidden feature didn't come to a surprise to you, then let's move on to the next hidden nerf to the throwing knife. Now, some of you may know this as I placed it up on our community post, but this came as a surprise as it no longer can the throwing knife penetrate armor and instead bounces right off behemoth legs, which it used to kill in 4 consecutive strikes. Another slightly hidden feature is the buff to arc weapons. Seemingly, the best example of the power of arc weapons is the arc thrower against the new enemy type Impaler. The main benefit of the arc thrower is that the arcs penetrate through the Impaler's head armor plates and can continuously damage them until killed. I also had this strange instant where it instantly killed one, though I imagine that was a glitch. The next hidden feature that brought me straight joy was the introduction of flaming stalagmites. These new terrain pieces can be chained together to form a wall of flames by using only a single shot as a catalyst. Initially, I had died many times due to an explosion I could not explain, and these stalagmites oozing gas on certain maps can be unnoticed at a quick glance, but can prove to become useful tools to use against many different enemy types. The best case was when we had these flaming stalagmites situated around a defend citizens objective, which we used to thwart bug advances for an easier clear mission. Moving on to 2 main stratagem buffs this patch, let's talk about the Orbitals. The walking barrage now clears the same area with increased density of strikes, leaving no stone unturned, great for initial pushes into heavily congested objectives and areas. And the 120 barrage also a main player, as it's now able to constantly barrage the area and have a faster cooldown, allowing it to have its own distinct identity compared to the 380. These 2 buffs were a fun part of the new patch, as they are both can cause chaos and bliss on the battlefield. I enjoyed using the walking barrage myself, as it was also a stratagem I had difficulty learning how to use effectively. With the changes, I was able to recommit myself to learning how to use it effectively with a refreshed attitude. The buff to the 120 barrage was also a nice touch, as it originally felt as an inferior copy to the 380, however it is difficult for me to master, as aiming the 120 on anything besides an immobile bug hole proved to be in vain, as the majority or all of the stratagem barrage missed my mobile targets. Thus, if you have any advice, I would love to read it in the comments, so thank you. Now, there are more things that changed that I didn't mention here because I mentioned them in my previous video talking about the main patches to take note of, but if you're curious, I'll link the video at the end, so feel free to check that out. Another thing I wanted to briefly mention is the great rewards that you get after clearing out super nests. Originally, the hype of the trailer and devs mentioned that by clearing these large outposts you would receive a reward worth the effort. But after a couple games, it was clear that the great rewards were only 4 rare and 2 super rare samples. Now, I wanted to mention in one of my games, my squad and I found 3 of these trophies, which stack to 12 rares and 6 supers, but I've yet to run into a game where I have found multiple of these again. But if that were indeed possible to get multiple on one mission, do you think that it would be worthy of the description of great rewards? If you are still angry and unmotivated at Helldivers 2, even after listening this whole time, let me ask you a final question. What was it that first drew you into playing Helldivers 2? Was it the chaos, the swarm of enemies, the strategy, the squads, the graphics, or the community? Take a moment to look at the gameplay I'm playing right here, right now, right in front of you. Gameplay like this can only be acquired from Helldivers 2. The chaos of war, an open battlefield, assaults coming from every angle, opportunities to save teammates, making a final stand, having fun with friends, managing cooldowns, and taking in breathtaking scenery. All of these details are what make Helldivers unique, refreshing, and fun. But success or failure are 2 sides of the same coin. A misplaced drop, an untimely death, stratagems or weapons that don't match the mission objective, all can be the final nail in the coffin. I guess what I'm saying is, these elements I mentioned are still prevalent in the game today, and although you may have problems with how the company is run or how the game is updated, let's not forget the good things that Arrowhead Studio has done, such as allowing super credit farming with small chances to get 100 super credit as a reward, hyping up the community for new content, listening to community voices and buffing various stratagems, and bringing in new content that brings back the community to the front lines. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like and share button. If you learned something new, think of subscribing. And if you have something you want to share, leave it in the comments below. And I have a final request to those of you still watching till this point. As you may know, this video type is something I'm trying for the first time, and I would like some feedback in what you liked or disliked about it so I can improve the videos I'm putting out for you. Anyways, thank you for watching and supporting me. I'm Twilts, and I will see you in the next video.